Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Carving It Up Live right here on Facebook Live, YouTube, and Twitter. As always, I'm Bryson Carver, and we've got an unbelievable show for you guys today. You know, for a mid-April show on Thursday, I'm packed with topics. It's crazy, but I'm packed with topics. Trevor Lawrence made some stunning comments. He, his dad, his high school head coach. Just a lot to unpack and get into. I'll get into that in just a second. Also, there's a three-man race for the MVP in the NBA. And what's ironic about it is none of the three are even being discussed as the MVP of the NBA this season. I'll get into that later on after, of course, I discuss Trevor Lawrence. Also, Charles Woodson is once again confirming, as many people have that I've talked about in this show, what I believed about Aaron Rodgers for quite a while. Is that he is leaving Green Bay. I will discuss what Charles Woodson, who's going to the Hall of Fame, as he absolutely should, said about Aaron Rodgers recently and the Green Bay Packers. Also, somebody who, in the comment section, of course, comment your opinions of what I think or anything you guys want to bring up to start some sports debates, sports topics. Love it. Love you guys chiming in with your opinion. I think it makes the show that much better, so keep doing what y'all are doing. But on Monday's show, one of the people who was in the comments said, "Hey, who in your opinion is the greatest NBA player to not be in the Hall of Fame?" Well, he put me on the spot, and I didn't know. I couldn't find somebody in my head. Like, man, I couldn't. But I looked back the last few days. I've got a guy who it shocked me is not in the Hall of Fame, but he isn't, and I'll get into that later on in the show. But first, Trevor Lawrence, who's going to be the number one overall pick in this year's NFL draft, and we've known that since he crushed Alabama in the 2019 national championship game. We remember that was Bama was the number one team, Clemson was the number two team. Bama came in, they were undefeated. I believe Clemson also was as well, but we saw Tua was the favorite to win the Heisman, but he struggled in November, and Kyler Murray ended up taking the Heisman, and he just had an incredible year, and of course he deserved it. But Tua had an amazing 2019 season, and I remember Trevor Lawrence came into Clemson midway through the year, and we'd heard a lot of hype about Trevor Lawrence, and you know he's got this talent. I'm like, okay, let's see what's up, and we saw what's up. He played outstanding. If we're going to the playoff now, he played outstanding against Notre Dame in the Cotton Bowl to advance to the national championship game, where he faced Alabama. And most of the times when these two teams get together, which it seems like they do every couple of years, it is an all-time classic. We remember the 2016 national championship game. We remember the 2017 national championship game. It seems like every time these teams get together, we get an all-time college football classic. Well, that was not the case in 2019. It was a final score of 44-16. And Trevor Lawrence absolutely just shredded Alabama's defense that night in Santa Clara, California. And we've known for the last 2 years he's going to be the number one overall pick without a question. I've talked about many times in this show that most people believe he's the most talented quarterback, if not at least a top three most talented quarterback coming out of college, up there with Peyton Manning, with Andrew Luck, with especially John Elway. And Sports Illustrated, obviously great magazine, they came out with a cover story of Trevor Lawrence. It was Trevor. They interviewed his dad. I believe they interviewed his new wife. By the way, congrats to Trevor Lawrence and his wife. They got married recently. And they also interviewed Trevor's high school head coach. And Trevor made some comments that way. It wasn't like anything like morally wrong or anything like that. Like, I don't want to paint it as, oh, he said something that could like actually genuinely get him in trouble. No. But he said something in Sports Illustrated, and I've seen a lot of big reaction to it. And listen, I don't blame people for doing this. So here's exactly what he said. Quote, "It's hard to explain that because I want people to know that I'm passionate about what I do and that it's really important to me, but I don't have this huge chip on my shoulder that everyone's out to get me and I'm trying to prove everybody wrong. I just don't have that. I can't manufacture that. I don't want to." So I'll get into that later, but let me finish with the other quotes. His dad also said, quote, "Trevor," this is the worst quote to me, "Trevor is not a win a Super Bowl at all costs kind of person." His high school football coach also said he could walk away from the game of football and be fine. Like, fine with it. So let me start with Trevor. Now, certainly not everybody is wired like Tom Brady, just obsessed. Like, I want to be the best. I want to squeeze everything I can possibly squeeze out of my career, to become the greatest I can be. And I'm, by the way, I'm not criticizing or questioning Trevor Lawrence's work ethic, but this is a league. This is the NFL. We talk about, you were the big guy on campus. Okay, we'll see how you do with the grown men out here. The NFL is a league more than any other league, more than the NHL, the NBA, Major League Baseball, than any other league in American sports, where it's brutal out there, man. And if you don't have that edge, if you don't have that extra motivation, there are dudes out there that, came from obviously less fortunate situations than Trevor Lawrence, where this is their life. This is it for them. If they don't succeed in the NFL, it's it for them. It's it for their family. Like, this is it. They are playing for something much bigger than the game of football. That's why you see so many guys when they get, certain players that have gotten contract extensions that came from less fortunate situations, them and their families, and they're at the podium and they're crying, and it means that, and not to say it doesn't mean something to the players that grew up in middle class or rich, if you will, upbringings, but for the players that started from humble beginnings and to make it to the NFL and then later on sign a big contract extension, that you could tell it strikes a different chord in them than it does with a lot of people, because this is their life. Switching to to somebody in the NBA, Damian Lillard, he's one of the great clutch shot makers in the NBA. And somebody asked him, how do you make these pressure shots? He said, that's not pressure. He said, pressure is when you're seeing your family members go hungry, when you're seeing, stuff happen in your neighborhoods that is wrong. Like, that's pressure. A shot at the end of the game is not pressure when it all comes down to it. So that's what I'm saying with Trevor. He's clearly the best quarterback in the draft. And there's some good ones, but he is by a mile the best quarterback as far as talent in the draft, one of the best ever. He'd be the number one pick in a lot of NFL drafts, without question. However, as I mentioned, this is a league, the NFL, where it's, guys, this is their life. This is it. Like, to go kind of what his high school coach was saying, he could walk away from the game of football and be fine. I'm trying really hard to think of a Hall of Fame level player, a great player even today that's going to go to the Hall of Fame one day, that had that mentality like, it doesn't work out for me. It is what it is. Of course, there's more to life than football. We all know that. I think even his wife said that in the interview. Look, there's more to life than football. Well, duh. Of course there is. But, you think guys like, the greatest quarterback ever, Tom Brady, and I hate to measure people up to Tom, but a guy who's the most obsessive guy, I think, in the league at his craft. I mean, he said in the documentary with Facebook Live, Tom versus Time, great documentary. If you haven't seen it, you ought to go watch it, from a few years back that he did. But he said, I could sit for hours and watch film. He loves it. It is everything to him. He's still married to Giselle. He still has kids. Of course, he has a family life. He spends time with his family. He does have a life outside of football. This isn't to say, it should just be football, 24 hours a day, 365 days out of the year. It's not realistic. They're not robots. They're human beings. But this is how you're going to make your bread. This is it. This is how you're going to make your money. And when you see somebody who is not as committed as you would want a guy to be, who is not as doesn't have that edge that drives him to be great. The chip on the shoulder is what drives dudes to be great. It's what drives the greatest players ever to be what they were. Kurt Warner was undrafted. The man, ladies and gentlemen, was bagging groceries one year. A year later, he was the Super Bowl MVP. Think about that. So he had that drive in him to go from, I'm assuming, not making a whole lot of money at all, bagging groceries, to starting quarterback, greatest show on turf with not the LA Rams at the time, they were the St. Louis Rams, winning the Super Bowl, of course, that year against the Tennessee Titans. It clearly meant enough to Kurt Warner to say, man, I want to provide for my family. This means something to me. This is it. Even Peyton Manning's dad, and you could throw Eli in there, but I'm just using Peyton as an example because he was the better of the two. Peyton Manning's dad, Archie, was obviously a great college quarterback, and I firmly believe he would have been a great NFL quarterback if the man had an offensive line in New Orleans. I mean, you ought to go. There's not a whole lot of Archie Manning highlights on YouTube, in part because the man was running for his life. But, of course, Peyton came from, his family, I'm sure, did well financially. But Peyton, because he loved the game, he was kind of to the level of Brady, where it's studying film constantly. Peyton, if you ask a guy like Ray Lewis, the battles between Peyton and Ray Lewis are just, they were amazing. But Ray said Peyton would over-prepare. He wouldn't prepare. He would over-prepare just to be ready to go. And so I'm not questioning Trevor's work ethic, but I am questioning the fact, is this really for you? Is it in you deep down do you want to be one of the greatest quarterbacks ever? Does he have the talent? No doubt. Without a question. And I don't think this quote is going to make, he's going to be a draft bust. Lord knows I'm not going to say that because I don't think that's true. But especially look at the head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars, Urban Meyer. How many head coaches just in the NFL, and Urban hasn't coached a game yet, are as competitive as one Urban Meyer? I can't think of that many. The dude wants to win. That's all he did in college. That's all he did. So you think he wants to come in the NFL and go 2-14? Of course not. So if he sees his future franchise quarterback saying stuff like, I just don't have that chip on my shoulder. I don't have that motivation, that that drive to be, to prove everybody wrong. There's not a lot of people for Trevor to prove wrong. Yes. But listen, we all know LeBron coming out of high school, he was the chosen one on Sports Illustrated, same magazine, right? As Trevor Lawrence is on. He was the chosen one. But of course, along the way, he's got his doubters. He's got his doubters. People to this day, when LeBron is easily, at worst case scenario, in my belief, the second greatest player of all time to MJ, he still has his doubters. He uses that and, of course, any other internal motivation to continue to drive him to be great. I think the greatest driving force for LeBron is to pass Jordan or to catch Jordan. But one of his motivations, and he said it, he said, I want my respect. After they won the finals last year, he said, I want my respect, man. So LeBron has obviously heard the doubters. Trevor Lawrence ain't going to go his whole career without a single doubter. That's just not realistic. He would have to have, even guys that had seemingly perfect careers didn't go without their doubters. They didn't. That's not realistic. And then what his dad said, it's like, whoa, hold up. His dad said, quote, this is exactly what he said. Trevor is not a win a Super Bowl at all costs type of person. Well, dang, what are you playing the game for? What did the great Herm Edwards say? You play to win the game. You don't play to just play. That's what he said. You play to win the game. You don't play to just play. Is he there just to pull in a check? I mean, that's great, but winning at the end of the day is what sports is all about. It's what football is all about. And so, and especially winning at the highest level, winning Super Bowls, we've seen the greatest athletes, once they finally, they go through a career-long struggle, and then you see, John Elway. John Elway, in my view, is the fourth or fifth greatest quarterback of all time. Might have been the best quarterback ever coming out of college. But as we have a comment from here from I Am Dissenting from YouTube. Yeah, it's a huge red flag for me, if I'm honest. Yeah, that's what I'm saying, man. It's concerning. Thank you for the comment, I Am Dissenting. Hey, stick around and make your thoughts heard, and everybody else in the chat, we'd really appreciate that. But John Elway, everybody knew he was great. Everybody knew that. And he goes his whole career, and finally, he wins the Super Bowl against the Green Bay Packers. Remember, he had the helicopter run for the big first down in that game. Like, he wanted that thing, and you see the joy on John Elway's face when he's holding the Lombardi Trophy. Like, that's he wanted that thing so bad. And I'll say Trevor doesn't, want to win a Super Bowl, but his dad said it. I mean, his dad knows him better than all of us do. Trevor is not a win a Super Bowl at all costs type of person. Again, what are you playing the game for? Tom Brady has nothing left to prove. Hey, his wife said it. We saw the mic'd up, or wasn't it mic'd up? It was Tom Brady told, I think it was James Corden on the late night show. He told James Corden, he said, Giselle told me after the game, what more do you have left to prove? And it's fair. I mean, the man's won 7 rings, 3 MVPs. Nobody doubts, unless you literally know nothing about the game of football or you're just a hater, that he's the greatest quarterback who ever lived. Yeah, what more does he have to prove? And you saw the Instagram post recently. I'm going after 8. I'm going after my 8th ring. I want to squeeze every bit out of this orange I can. I want to squeeze every little bit out of my career that I can. I'm going after my 8th ring. That's what it's all about. It's all about winning. You play to win the game. And so that's concerning on the part. That's probably the one quote where I'm like, what? So when you read this, it's like, what's up here? And you know, to think, and I talked about it in depth on my show last week. I won't get too much into it today. You could just go listen to last week's episodes wherever you listen to your podcast. But I talked about Justin Fields. Like, people question Justin Fields' work ethic and Justin Fields' commitment to the game. Look what this guy said. The number 1 overall pick, which he's going to be. This is going to change his draft status. But if I'm Jacksonville, man, or especially if I'm Urban Meyer, I'm calling this dude like, what is up? Why on earth would you say that? Why else are we drafting you? Jacksonville's obviously never won a Super Bowl. Frankly, outside of a couple of years where they got to the AFC Championship game, they haven't really come that close. And so you just sit back and say, this is the guy we expect to change our franchise and lead us to great places for the next 15 years or so. And he's not a win a Super Bowl at all costs type of guy. He doesn't have a chip on his shoulder. He could leave football today and be totally good with it. That's, man, that is not a good look whatsoever. And as the comment a few minutes ago said, it's a huge red flag. It is. Listen, when I saw these comments, I couldn't believe it. I was stunned. Again, what Trevor said wasn't like morally wrong. It wasn't like something that could like genuinely get him in trouble in the real world. No. But when we question your commitment issues, you know, that's not great. You can't rely on just talent alone in the NFL. I believe I saw today that there's like 1.1 million high school football players around America, and 0.0001% make the NFL. That's an exclusive club. So these are the best players, the best football players in the world. And so you can't just rely on talent alone to get you to where you want to be. Where does Trevor Lawrence want to be? I don't know. Does he just want to play to just play, as Herm Edwards said? It looks like that. It sure looks that way. So these are concerning quotes coming from the number 1 overall pick, his dad, his wife, his high school football coach. Like, man, like this does not sound like somebody who is driven to be an all-time great. I mean, this isn't great. And he's known for a while he's going to be the number 1 overall pick. And so this is not a good look for Trevor Lawrence. So again, I genuinely, when I saw this, I was like, no, he didn't say that. And you can go online right now to Sports Illustrated. He said it. It was genuinely stunning. I'm not going to lie to you. So let me shift to the MVP conversation in the NBA. And you know, this has been something I've been very passionate about. This has been a strange year for the NBA. Like the last few years, once we get to about this stage of the season where there's about a month left, we all kind of know who's going to win. Last year, LeBron, made a push towards the end, but we all kind of knew, Giannis is going to be the MVP. And then a year before that, Harden made a push. We all kind of knew, Giannis is going to win this thing. Year before that, LeBron made a push, but it was, Harden's probably going to win, even though I thought LeBron probably should have won. Actually, he should have won. Just no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But this has been one of those years where we thought it was Embiid for a while, and then Embiid got hurt, and he's came back, and he's been outstanding. Jokic has been in there. James Harden. LeBron was until he got hurt, and so LeBron won't have played enough games by the time he does come back to be the MVP. But I submit this to you. At the end of the college basketball tournament, they give an award out called the most outstanding player, which simply goes to the best player on the championship team. It is straightforward. Who was the best player on the championship team? We're going to give it to this guy. That's in pro sports. MVP has always been something that has confused the crap out of me. I don't get it. Let's use Russell Westbrook as an example. Russell Westbrook, Kevin Durant leaves, of course, infamously, and Russell gets the Thunder to the playoffs. He averages a triple-double, which at that point had never been done since Oscar Robertson back in like the 60s, so it had been a minute. A year later, the Thunder make the playoffs. They're the 4 seed. They're a higher seed. Russ averages a triple-double again. And his name was not even talked about for MVP. Now, I don't think Russ should have been MVP that first season. I don't. I think James Harden should have been back in 2016-17. But if this is how we're going to do it, because he averaged a triple-double, then he did the same thing a year later and the year after that. And he's close to doing it this year with the Washington Wizards. Why is nobody talking about him for MVP? If he won the first year for the triple-double, why? So I don't get it. LeBron James, for the better part of the last 15 years, has been the best player in the NBA. Ready for this? He hasn't won an MVP in 8 years. LeBron James, it's been 8 years since he's won an MVP. So that brings me to this. I hear a lot of people say Nikola Jokic for MVP, and Jokic has had an outstanding season. I've heard James Harden for MVP. I've heard, you heard LeBron for a while. You heard Embiid. Embiid's probably still got an outside shot if he plays every game the rest of the year, which I doubt he will. But there's 3 guys that are not even being discussed for MVP, and it baffles me. If MVP is most, not best, most valuable player, it's not the BP, best player, or the MOP, the most outstanding player, it's the MVP, most valuable player. Let's start with Giannis. I've said this for about a month. Giannis today is my MVP. Look at the East. Philly's loaded. We all know Brooklyn's loaded. And there sits Milwaukee at the 3 seed with still having at least a shot at the number 1 seed, if not the number 2 seed. They've got good players. You know me, I like Drew Holiday a lot. Chris Middleton, I've been critical of. If Chris Middleton is the second best player on your team, you can't win a championship. I've said that for a year on the show. Said that last year when the Bucks had the best record in basketball. And Giannis is putting up numbers very similar to last year when he won his second consecutive MVP. He's actually averaging more assists, more blocks, more steals, and a comparable amount of points and rebounds. Nobody's talking about Giannis. No, nobody's talking about Giannis. Why is that? That doesn't make any sense to me. Let's go now to Chris Paul. Chris Paul, who, it seems like nobody really brings up, and I love Magic, Steph, Stockton, Isaiah Thomas, but nobody ever brings up Chris Paul in the discussion for greatest all-time point guards. I don't get it. He's been the essence of stability his entire career. And Chris Paul is kind of like Urban Meyer. Everywhere he goes, he wins instantly. Instantly. This year, you look at Chris Paul's numbers, they're not overwhelming. About 16 points, 4.5 rebounds, a little under 9 assists. He's got a player efficiency rating of 36th. It's not anything that's going to blow you away. But I'll just present this to you. The Phoenix Suns last year, they actually went 8-0 in the bubble. They were the only team to go undefeated in the bubble in the play-in games. But Phoenix finished just outside the playoffs last year. They had Chris Paul. This year, they're the 2 seed in the West. In the West. They've held off the Clippers. They beat Utah not long ago. And nobody's... Charles Barkley, Charles... it's what's funny with Charles Barkley. You normally, or at least I do, I either totally agree with him or I totally disagree with him. In this case, I totally agree with him in that he said, people got to start talking about Chris Paul for MVP. Steve Nash, when he won it over Shaq, did not put up crazy numbers with that Mike D'Antoni 7 seconds or less offense, which he had a great year, but his numbers were not going to blow you out of the water. Neither is Chris Paul's this year. But Phoenix was just outside the playoffs last year. This year, they're the 2 seed out west. They've got the second best record in the Western Conference, which we all acknowledge is the better conference of the 2. Now let's go to, and I've been saying this for a good 2 to 3 months on the show, my man, Steph Curry. Now, of course, he a few weeks back, or it really wasn't a few weeks back, it was about a month ago, he suffered that tailbone injury. Since he's come back from that tailbone injury, the last 8 games, you ready for this? Steph is averaging 39 points. He's hit 53 three-point shots in the last 8 games and is shooting almost 50% from 3. Not from the field, from 3. We talk about 50, 40, 90. He's almost going 50, 50, 90. 50% from the field, nearly 50% from 3, and 90% at the free throw line. Last night, 42 points, 11 threes in 3 quarters. By the way, Golden State is 1-7 this year without Steph Curry, including on Good Friday, just a couple weeks back, a few weeks back, they played the Toronto Raptors without Steph Curry. They lost by 53 points. They trailed that game by as many as 61. Last night, they played the Thunder. OKC and Toronto, surprisingly, despite Toronto clearly having more talent, or at least better veteran talent than OKC, Toronto's barely better than OKC. Golden State beat the Thunder last night by 38 points. So if we're going to talk about valuable, the Warriors have played 8 games without Steph. They've won 1 of them. And they're somehow in the playoff picture this year. We saw last year, no Steph Curry, worst record in basketball, 15-50. This year, they're 1-7 without him, including a 53-point loss to Toronto. I mean, it would still be awful if it were to the fully healthy Lakers or the Nets or the Clippers or Denver. To the Raptors, who are just fighting to get in the play-in tournament out east. If the season ended today, they wouldn't even get in the play-in tournament, which of course goes, 7, 8, 9, 10 seed. Toronto wouldn't even make that. And they beat Golden State by 53. They're barely better than OKC. Golden State beat OKC last night by 38. In case you're counting, that is a 91-point difference. That's my case. By the way, the last 3 games, Steph has broken his own record once again for the most 3-pointers hit in a 3-game stretch with 29. He's hit 29 threes in the last 3 games. That's almost 10 threes a game. It's insane. And so, yet nobody's talking about these 3 guys. So I just have the question. I have one question for the media. What is the MVP? This is why I say the only people that should vote for MVP, in my view, are players, coaches, and very, very select few members of the national NBA media. Because every year they change the narrative on what MVP is. Can we just make it most valuable player? If it's best player, then change what the award's called. I'd have no problem with that. At least you'd be coming out straightforward. Who had the best overall season statistically? But if we're talking about who means the most to their team, these are the 3 guys: Giannis, Chris Paul, Steph Curry. Because the Bucks, listen, without Giannis, where are the Bucks? 6 seed, 7 seed, like they'd probably make the playoffs because they're out east, especially with the addition of Drew Holiday this past offseason, and he is, he got his money. God bless him. He's a really good player, great dude. But Milwaukee is not even, nobody's talking about Milwaukee as a championship contender. You had Giannis, who's putting up the same numbers he did last year and the year before when he won the MVP those 2 straight years, yet nobody's talking about him this year. Why? He's putting up the same numbers. He's putting up more assists, more blocks, more steals, basically the same amount of points and rebounds. Why is nobody talking about Giannis? Chris Paul. The Suns barely missed the playoffs last year. They had Chris Paul. They're the 2 seed out west. And then Steph. They're 1-7 without him, including a 53-point loss to Toronto. And with him, they're obviously in the playoff mix. They're a game out of the 8 seed out west. So And by the way, the man's averaging nearly 40 points a game. In the last 8 games, the man's nearly averaging 40. He's hit 53 threes and is shooting almost 50% from three-point range. I said a few months ago, not long after his 62-point game against Portland earlier in the season, I said this Steph is playing better this year than he did when he won the unanimous MVP. Given what he's had to carry on his shoulders. Now, I get it. They went 73-9. He broke basically every three-point record in existence. Of course, he deserved the MVP that year. He won it unanimously. And I'm not saying Steph is the MVP. I'm just saying if as far as the top 3 guys, I think it goes in this order. Giannis, Chris Paul, Steph Curry. It's not James Harden. Brooklyn would still be a championship contender without James Harden. He's a great player. Brooklyn would still be a championship contender without James Harden. Denver, I think the loss of Jamal Murray would hurt more than the loss of Jokic. I really do. There were games where Jamal carried Denver in the playoffs. Carried him. He had that 40-point game in Game 7 against the Clippers. Jokic was not good at all in the Western Conference Finals last year against the Lakers. Jamal Murray was. Who else? Joel Embiid really hasn't played enough games, and the Sixers are still a very good team without him. Ben Simmons, Tobias Harris, they're a good basketball team. And the Lakers, LeBron simply hasn't played enough games, and he won't have played enough games by the time he comes back. So I'm just saying, if it's called the most valuable player, let's give it to the most valuable player. Let's stop changing the narrative year in and year out on what the most valuable player means. Just like I said with Westbrook. Westbrook won in 2016-17 because he averaged a triple-double. The next 2 years, he did the exact same thing. Averaged a triple-double. Nobody talked about him for MVP. So why do we change the narrative? Giannis is putting up the exact same numbers this year as he did the last 2, and nobody's talking about him for MVP. Let's just be consistent. If you're going to have a narrative, whether we agree with it or disagree with it, just be consistent. That's all we're asking. So, it's just amazing to me. If we're talking about the 3 most valuable players and nobody's talking about them, Giannis, CP3, and Steph. It kind of blows my mind a little bit. Now, let's go to Charles Woodson. Of course, he's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. Absolutely should be. Had an amazing career with the Raiders and with the Packers. And, of course, with the Packers, he won a Super Bowl. The year before that, in 2009, he won Defensive Player of the Year. Some argue that Darrelle Revis should have won it. We can have that debate all day. But, Charles Woodson won it in 2009. A year later, he was a huge contributor to the Packers winning Super Bowl 45 against the Pittsburgh Steelers that season. And so, of course, he was a teammate of Aaron Rodgers. And so I would think, he would know the guy a little bit. And Charles Woodson was on CBS radio, and they asked him, they said, well, how do you think this whole thing between Aaron Rodgers and the Packers, they seem to keep going back and forth on this little, it's not really a fight, but a little, they're going back and forth. And Charles said, quote, I think it could be one of those situations where it gets nasty at some point, somehow in the back and forth between the Packers and Aaron's agents. And then before you know it, somehow the thing gets blown up. I certainly hope that doesn't happen, but when there's smoke, there's fire. I've been saying this on the show since the draft last year, in that when Green Bay, of course, they had Devontae Adams, who's one of the best receivers in the NFL. But outside of that, they didn't really have that many skill players on the perimeter. And so we all assumed, okay, Green Bay will either trade up for a receiver or maybe a tight end, or they'll sit tight and they'll take one of, a receiver that might drop to them. And they took a quarterback. And that was kind of the beginning of the end in Green Bay, as far as I'm concerned. And it's not a shot at the young kid, but they take him, and Aaron Rodgers is sitting there like, hold on. We just got to the NFC Championship game last year. Part of the reason we lost, of course, they lost to a much better San Francisco team. But part of the reason we lost is because outside, if you take away Devontae Adams, who else do I have to work with? Valdez Scantling or guys like that? Is that really what you're giving me? And they took Jordan Love, a quarterback who they're not going to need for at least the next 3 years. And so Aaron's sitting there like, hold on a minute. I said last year on the show, Aaron's got 2 years left in Green Bay. Last year, he won the MVP, deserved the MVP. He had 48 touchdowns. I think only like 5 or 6 interceptions. It was crazy numbers. And the Packers are the best record in the NFC. Hosted the NFC Championship game, and some guy by the name of Tom Brady showed up, and that was that. But Aaron might be the best season he's ever had last year at the age of, 36, 37 years old, and still played at that high level. We all know, quarterbacks can play later in their career at still a high level. But plenty of Hall of Fame level quarterbacks have left their teams, went to greener pastures, and did well. Joe Montana left San Francisco when it was clear they were going to go in the direction of Steve Young. Excuse me. And Joe Montana got to an AFC Championship game with Kansas City. Peyton Manning left Indianapolis because of course, he had the 2 straight neck surgeries, and they're like, you know what? There's this kid named Andrew Luck who everybody loves. We love him. We don't know if we could trust Peyton as far as his health at this juncture of his career. We're going to let him go, and we're going to take Andrew Luck. And so Peyton moved on, went to Denver, had 3 outstanding seasons, got to the Super Bowl in his second year in Denver, and ironically, his worst season in Denver, statistically, he won the Super Bowl. Or Denver's defense won the Super Bowl. Peyton got a ring for it. But he went and did well with the second team. You look at a guy like Brett Favre. By the way, did you see what Brett Favre said recently? Eesh. But Brett Favre left Green Bay, of course, went to the Jets. That didn't really work out. But then he went to Minnesota, and one could argue at the age of 40 years old, a beat-up Brett Favre had the best season of his career with the Minnesota Vikings in 2009. So we've seen plenty of guys. Tom Brady. Tom left the New England Patriots after 20 years and 6 Super Bowl rings, went to Tampa, and won a Super Bowl in his first year. Who's to say Aaron Rodgers can't leave Green Bay and be successful? I'm one who believes that without Aaron, the Packers are irrelevant. They're not like Detroit irrelevant in their division, but they're more like Chicago irrelevant. And I think Chicago, if the Packers didn't have Aaron Rodgers, Chicago would be a better team than Green Bay. I'm just here to tell you that right now. Remember when Aaron Rodgers in 2018, it was the first game of the year, they were actually playing Chicago. And early in that game, Aaron Rodgers got sacked. Looked like he really messed up his knee, and it clearly plagued him throughout the rest of the year, but he hurt his knee. And I'm trying to remember the quarterback's name. DeShone Kizer. Now, DeShone Kizer was the quarterback of the Cleveland Browns the year prior, who had went 0-16, the second 0-16 team in NFL history. Well, DeShone Kizer is now Aaron Rodgers' backup. So Aaron gets hurt. DeShone Kizer comes in, and it was ugly. It was bad. It was not in a good way. It was not good. He threw a pick six. I mean, it was bad. And Aaron had to come in on a beat-up knee and save the day in the fourth quarter. We saw in 2017, the Packers got off to a 4-1 start. Aaron Rodgers hurt his collarbone, and they had to go to their backups. I think it was Brett Hundley at the time. They won 3 games the rest of the year, finished 7-9, missed the playoffs. 2013, Aaron Rodgers hurt, I think it was also his collarbone that year. And by the skin of their teeth, and it took Aaron coming back the last week of the season against the Bears to win the NFC North, by the skin of their teeth, they made the playoffs. So without Aaron Rodgers, I don't want to hear about the genius of Matt LaFleur. I think Aaron Jones is good. I think Devontae Adams is good. I think they have some solid players in their defense. But Aaron's the glue that holds that team together. There's not a question about it. So the fact that Green Bay refuses to be aggressive in the draft, in free agency, in trades, and they had a shot to get J.J. Watt in the offseason, and we're going to rest on our laurels and not pay for J.J. Watt. And so he said, okay, I guess I'm not coming home to Wisconsin. I'll just go to Arizona. And so I don't get it that an organization like Green Bay, which I think is well run, I really do. I think from the top on down, they're a well-run franchise, especially when you compare it to teams in their division like the Lions, like the Bears. But you've got, I looked at this the other day. So out of the last 26 MVPs in the NFL, just listen to this. The last 26 MVPs of the NFL, almost a fourth of them have been Green Bay Packers quarterbacks. Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers. Brett Favre won 3. He actually won 3 straight. Aaron Rodgers has won 3 MVPs. So in the last 20 years, they've had 2 Hall of Fame quarterbacks, first ballot Hall of Fame quarterbacks. Both guys won 3 MVPs. They have 2 Super Bowls in 30 years with those guys. 2. That's unacceptable. You've got Brett Favre, a fringe top 10 quarterback ever. You've got Aaron Rodgers, who I believe is a top 10 quarterback ever. And you have 2 rings to show for it in the last 30 years. Teams around the NFL would give anything just to have one of those guys for a decade. You've had both for 3. And you got 2 rings. That's it. That can't happen. And again, I think Green Bay is a well-run franchise. But their problem is they're just too darn stuck in their ways. We're going to do it our way. We're not going to be aggressive. Okay. The one time you were aggressive when you went out and got Charles Woodson, you won the Super Bowl. Who would have thunk it? So I don't get this. And this is why I believe I said a year ago on the show during the summer, Aaron's got 2 years left in Green Bay. After the drafting of Jordan Love, I'm like, that's the beginning of the end. Because if you won't even draft help for Aaron Rodgers, you're just drafting his replacement, then he's like, come on, they don't respect me the way they should. Aaron's a top 3 quarterback in the league, I believe. And so I just sit back and I'm like, man, what is up? And so I think this is his last year in Green Bay. I really do. I know there's some people that say, well, maybe it's just, Aaron's kind of doing what Russell Wilson did in Seattle, like just kind of using his leverage to get his way, which is a smart business move. Aaron's tried that and it hasn't worked. Because to Seattle's credit, Seattle's been aggressive with the late owner Paul Allen back in the day, acquiring players, great players in draft, trading up to get guys. Like, Seattle is an aggressive franchise. They went out and got Carlos Dunlap last season, helped their pass rush massively. As soon as they traded for Carlos Dunlap, their defense greatly improved. They went out and got Jamal Adams last year. You know how much Aaron Rodgers would love just on the defensive side of the ball to have Jamal Adams? So I don't get why Green Bay won't take advantage. Like, this isn't how it works. Like, it's not supposed to go from Joe Montana to Steve Young, from Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers, to a lesser degree, Tony Romo to Dak Prescott. It doesn't work that way. You get a great quarterback, and then you go through about 2 or 3 years, maybe longer, where you just kind of have some standing guys, some guys of the level of Teddy Bridgewater or Marcus Mariota or Andy Dalton, like guys at that level. As I call them, high-end or low-end backup or low-end backups, high-end low-end start. I messed that up. Low-end starters, high-end backups. There we go. But it's not how it works. So Green Bay's got to look at themselves in the mirror and say, man, we've wasted a lot of Aaron Rodgers' prime. It's either we couldn't put the defense behind him or we couldn't give him help on the perimeter. And in this case, it's help on the perimeter. They've got a pretty good defense. Not a great defense, but it's pretty good. It's the top half of the NFL. It's good. It's not great, but it's good. It's not Tampa Bay's. And so this is what I think Aaron's gone after this year. I really do. I think he's going to go out there, have another great season, throw somewhere around 35, 40 touchdown passes, have once again an outstanding touchdown to interception ratio, and the Packers will probably get bounced in the divisional round or in the NFC Championship game by Tampa Bay, and that'll be that. Aaron's like, okay, Tom Brady left New England. I can leave. I'm the best quarterback in Packers history, and they've had some great ones. The late Bart Starr, Brett Favre, they've had some great quarterbacks, but I'm the best. I'm out of here. I'm going to go to greener pastures. Heck, I've suggested many times on the show, what if he went to Chicago? What if he did what Brett Favre did, go to a team within the division and contend for a Super Bowl immediately? Because with Chicago's talent, Chicago is a talented football team. They are stacked on the defensive side of the ball. They've got Allen Robinson, who's one of the most underrated receivers in football. They've got a good tight end core, a decent offensive line that could use some improvement. Like, Chicago's a good football team. Aaron goes there, they're instant contenders, and the Packers are immediately out of the Super Bowl picture. So, and I don't see Green Bay changing in anywhere in the near future. They retained Aaron Jones, but Aaron Jones took a pay cut. So it's not like they gave him the money that he was, that we all thought he was going to get. So this one don't make that much sense to me. in regards to Aaron Rodgers and the Packers, and I 100% agree with Charles Woodson. I sadly believe it's going to get a little nasty, and he's going to ultimately leave. I think that's what's going to happen. So now I had a comment on the show recently on Monday's shows. It was, had some great dialogue between, myself and the viewers. I love it. Love talking to you guys. Love debating sports. It makes the show that much more fun. And one of the comments caught me off guard a little bit. And so I give them credit for that. That's keep me on my toes. And he said, who is the greatest NBA player to not be in the Hall of Fame? And I sat there and I was like, I don't know. I'd have to look at the players who are not in the Hall of Fame. And so I was looking at it and I was like, wait, hold on. He's not in the Hall of Fame? Here's my guy, just real quick. The fact that I didn't know he wasn't in the Hall of Fame. The fact that Chris Webber's not in the Hall of Fame with his numbers and what he did in his career is crazy. I'm not saying he's first ballot Hall of Famer, but man, I mean, a lot of people believe Manu Ginobili has a shot to be first ballot Hall of Famer when he's eligible in like 2023. Why isn't Chris Webber? Let me give you Chris Webber's numbers. These are Hall of Fame level numbers. Almost 21 points a game, 10 rebounds, 1.4 blocks, 1.4 steals, 5 All-Star game appearances, and 5 All-NBA teams made. That's a Hall of Famer. He did it all. There were years, even when he was in Sacramento, where his name was in the MVP discussion. So this was a really, really good player. He was a Rookie of the Year when he came in with the Golden State Warriors. Like, this dude had a great 15-year career. He had the longevity to it. Again, multiple All-Star games, multiple All-NBA teams made. 21 and 10 with 1.4 blocks, 1.4 steals. That's Hall of Fame numbers. So there you go. That's my answer to that question, Grady. I really appreciate the comment from Monday's show. So yeah, Chris Webber's a Hall of Famer. I'm surprised that he didn't make it. It's kind of like, I talked about Julian Edelman on Monday, that, as great of a career as he had and as great of an overachieving career as he had, and he'll go in the Patriots Ring of Honor as he should. But the man never made even a Pro Bowl, ever. He never made a Pro Bowl. If it was just based on his postseason career, no, not even going to argue with it there. He's statistically, Edelman's the greatest receiver in playoff history outside of Jerry Rice, who's the greatest receiver of all time, no debate. So credit to him for doing that in his career. It did help that he had this Brady guy throwing to him. So you have to take that into consideration as well. Like Randy Moss had his best NFL season with Tom Brady, but Randy Moss was great in Minnesota. He was productive in San Francisco when he went there. His last season of his career, he was decent in Tennessee, and he it ended ugly in Oakland, but he had his moments over there too. I don't think Julian Edelman could have just went anywhere and had a great career. Like I don't think he's that type of player. He lacks the size. But yeah, that's another discussion for another day, I guess 5 years from now. Now, final topic of the day, Jadeveon Clowney the other day signed a 1-year deal, which could be worth up to $10 million with the Cleveland Browns. Now, of course, he was the number 1 overall pick back in 2014. And no disrespect, but I believe he was the number 1 overall pick by Houston because of what was arguably the greatest hit in the history of college football I think it was the Outback Bowl against Michigan. I remember the sequence of events. It was, I think South Carolina came up. They went for it on 4th down. They clearly got the first down, but the officials marked it short for some reason. And the very next play, Michigan runs it right up the gut, and Clowney comes in and just crushes the guy. Loses his helmet, loses the ball. I mean, it was awesome. He's one of the best athletes in the NFL, but he has not even come close to living up to number 1 overall pick potential. He's never really had a season where it's been like, okay, that's the guy Houston took number 1 overall. That's the guy that we all assumed was going to end up being one of the best pass rushers in the league. But he's got great athleticism. He's quick. But he didn't, last year I thought he would help fix the Titans' pass rush, and he really didn't. I think he only had like 1 sack. So he did virtually nothing for Tennessee before he got hurt. But now he goes to Cleveland, where he's got Myles Garrett, who is the best defensive end in football, on the other side. So Myles Garrett's going to get all the attention. He's going to get double teamed every time. And so it could create more one-on-one opportunities for Clowney. Now, I'm hearing a lot of people saying, hey, does this make Cleveland a Super Bowl contender? Now, I will say this. Loved what Cleveland did in free agency. They added Johnson from the Rams, one of the best safeties in the league. Got him on the cheap, too. I think he's making about the same that Clowney's making, maybe a little bit more, about $10 to $15 million. They're getting back just, they didn't even sign the guy. They drafted him last year, but he got hurt. Grant Delpit, who was excellent at LSU, especially the year, LSU won the national championship a couple of years back. They're getting him back from injury, Grant Delpit, and so he can really help their secondary. So Cleveland's defense is stacked, and Cleveland's offense is stacked. I think they're going to trade Odell Beckham Jr. before the season, before it's all said and done. I don't think Odell really wants to be in Cleveland, and I think the Browns recognize Baker's numbers are better. Just look at his numbers, his passer rating, passing yards, touchdown to interception ratio. All those numbers are better without Odell. And I think it's because Baker feels the need to force it to Odell and, the whole bit. So Odell, I don't think really wants to be in Cleveland. The Browns know Baker is better without Odell. I think they'll make a deal and maybe get some draft picks, maybe add extra player to their defense, maybe a linebacker, who knows. But even without Odell, Browns got a good offense. Stacked offensive line, which they did a great job addressing last year in the offseason. That was one of their biggest holes, and they pretty much completely addressed it last year. They had, JT Treader, great center. They drafted the guy, I can't remember his name, out of Alabama last year as their left tackle. Like, they've got a great offensive line. They've got the best running back duo in the league by far in Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. They've got Jarvis Landry. They've got the Higgins kid. They've got Austin Hooper. They've got David Njoku. That's a stacked roster. My only question is this. Can Baker take that next step? By the way, also, before I get to Baker, they have a great coaching staff. Kevin Stefanski was the coach of the year. He was the coach of the year. He went from Minnesota, was their offensive coordinator, went to Cleveland, and they went 11-5, beat their rival, their most hated rival, the Pittsburgh Steelers, in a playoff game, and came close to beating the Chiefs, albeit without Mahomes, in the divisional round. They had a great, especially by Cleveland Browns standards, that was a great season. It all comes down to Baker Mayfield. Can he take that next step? Now, you guys know what I think about Baker. I think since he's came into the league, he's gotten more mature. As far as work ethic, I don't really question Baker's work ethic. As a matter of fact, I gave him his props last year because he said in an interview that the year prior, 2019, when Baker was just terrible, he almost led the league in interceptions if it weren't for Jameis Winston throwing 30 of them. But Baker said, hey, he flat out said, I was chubby. I put on too much bad weight, and it hurt my overall performance. And so he lost some of that weight. He got into better shape, and he had a good year last year. I think Baker is a middle-of-the-road quarterback, but I think what it comes down to is this. The Browns still have not extended Baker Mayfield. They know, because remember, Dak just got his deal, $40 million a year. Mahomes is kind of the bar at 45. Nobody's going to get paid more than Mahomes, we assume. Especially with right now the salary cap, although that's going to get bigger later on, which will make these deals even bigger. But for now, it's not large. You've got 3 quarterbacks from the 2018 class that are all looking to get paid. Josh Allen, Bills have no doubt. He's our guy. We're going to pay him. Baltimore, Lamar's their guy. Who are they going to get that's better than Lamar Jackson? Come on. Like, really? He won the MVP 2 years ago. He just needs to work on getting better as a pure passer. And even him not being a great thrower of the football, they've been to the divisional round 2 straight years, and they've won the division twice and got to the playoffs last year. So Ravens believe in Lamar Jackson. There's no question. Cleveland is not all in yet on Baker. They've got the stacked roster, great offensive line, great receiving core, great tight ends, amazing 2 running backs. And now they just added Jadeveon Clowney, who, I think this is Jadeveon's last chance, I believe. Like, if he doesn't succeed in Cleveland when he has Myles Garrett on the other side, this is it for Jadeveon Clowney, and it was just kind of a bust career, which we kind of all know that now, but he could at least maybe show some of that old ability that we thought maybe he had coming into the league. So I think he has a potential for, maybe a double-digit sack season with Myles Garrett on the other side, getting all the attention. And so a loaded defense, a great coaching staff, a loaded offense, it all comes down to Baker. Can he do it? I don't know. I'm not willing to buy in yet because just last year, Mahomes gets hurt in the third quarter. Chad Henne comes in, and I mean, Kansas City couldn't get in the end zone. And Baker had opportunity after opportunity after opportunity. Couldn't finish it. Once Kansas City took away the run game, Baker kind of got exposed. He wasn't bad, just didn't make any big plays. So, can he make that jump this year? What he made last year from the year prior? Sure. I think he's capable of doing it. He was the number one pick. I don't think he should have been, but he was the number one pick for a reason. Cleveland believed in him for a reason. They thought he could turn their franchise around, and he's done a good job. He has. I think he's like a game over 500, which by Cleveland Browns standards is outstanding. But if he can't, listen, forget win the division. Baltimore's got a stacked roster. Pittsburgh's not winning the division. Big Ben's way out of his prime, and Cincinnati's got a long way to go. It's a two-team race for the division, Baltimore and Cleveland. Forget winning the division with this roster. If the Browns can't get to, I think if they don't get to the AFC Championship game, because listen, Kansas City got worse in the offseason. They lost both starting tackles. I get it. They added the one center from I think it was from New England. I think it was. I get it. It's a good addition. Their defense is up and down. We assume Kansas City will be in the AFC Championship game. Will Buffalo be back? Were they a one-hit wonder? I think Josh Allen's great, but I don't know if Buffalo can follow up what they did last year. New England, stop. I'm not worried about New England. Roster, compare Cleveland to Buffalo. Cleveland's got a way better roster than Buffalo. And Buffalo's good. You got Stephon Diggs and Josh Allen. Good offensive line. Really need to improve the running game. They've got great players on the defensive side of the ball. Micah Hyde, Tre'Davious White. Buffalo's got a good roster, but it's not as good overall as the Cleveland Browns. I think if Cleveland can't, at the very least, get back to the divisional round with this roster, they're not gonna extend Baker. They're gonna say, let's run this back with the same team, just a different quarterback. We'll maybe go out, see if we can get a guy in free agency that might be available. Maybe an Aaron Rodgers. Who knows? If Aaron Rodgers is available next year, you think they're going to stick with Baker? I get Baker's a lot younger than Aaron, but listen, what did Tampa Bay do? They said, we got a great defense, great receiving core, a coaching staff we like, but man, we just can't find the quarterback. So we might as well sign the old guy, put all of our, put everything we got into these next 2 or 3 years. We know we're going to be terrible afterwards. Similar in the NBA to what the Raptors did. The Raptors were very good, but year in and year out, they go in the conference semifinals. And so then they were like, you know what? Kawhi Leonard's going to leave if we trade for him, but we'll have a shot to win the finals. We probably won't win another one after us, but we might as well go after one because we don't have a shot to win now with just DeMar DeRozan and Kyle Lowry. They trade for Kawhi Leonard, and they won the championship. Tampa Bay signed Tom Brady, and they've won the Super Bowl. That's something that I think Aaron would be most likely to go to Chicago, but that's something to keep in mind. If Baker's kind of average this year, will they just drop him and go with a guy like Aaron Rodgers if Aaron becomes available next year, which I strongly believe he will? That's something to keep your eye out for. So that is all the time we have for today's show. Thank you all so much for watching or listening. Catch us tomorrow, as always, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time on Facebook Live, YouTube, and Twitter. As far as listening to the podcast, you're listening on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcast, Anchor, as well as wherever you listen to your podcast. Hope everybody has a great evening. Catch us tomorrow. Please continue to stay safe. God bless you all. Peace out.